I actually have one more game that I feel like I have to talk about, even though I don't want to. So can I? And this doesn't even. I'm going to look so bad here to the gaming community, but Mom Brain, can I get a drum roll, please?
Of course you can.
Anastasia Beaverhausen guessed Honey Pop.
I beat Undertale.
Hey!
This was a couple of weeks ago. I've had some time to process it. Raw Meat knows that I had a little bit of a mental breakdown.
Now, I wouldn't say a little bit.
Yeah, it was a huge mental breakdown. Like, it threw me off for the entire day. I have to say, and I know this game is critically acclaimed. It's tens. Everyone loves it. I'm the only person in the world who does not like this game, and I don't know what I did wrong. It left me feeling stupid, and I told RMC this, and he's laughing because he thinks it's so funny.
Well, basically, the thing is, you had the experience with the game that everybody has. It makes you think and feel things, and there's things you don't understand, and that's what everybody is intrigued by with the game, but it just made you angry.
Yeah, because it looks like somebody smeared poop on the screen, right?
Well, that was me. You know, I put up my defenses when there's a game that I'm unfamiliar with or I have to play it. You know, like, I put up those defenses, and I was being unfair to the graphics of the game. It's not about the graphics. The story is good. The dialogue is hilarious. Like, there's a lot of things where you're reading it and you laugh out loud. Like, it doesn't feel the comedy is not lost on me. But when you go through all of this, and RMC was trying to explain this to me, like, it's not about black and white, good and bad. Your decisions, even though you tried to be good, didn't give you the results that you wanted. And I feel like I could live with all of that, but the game just made me feel like I was stupid. And I don't know how else to explain it, because I did, again, I'm talking in circles, but I did everything right. Like, I talked to everyone. I was so nice to people. I went on a date with a skeleton, for God's sake, and he rejected me.
See, this is what I'm talking about. The fact that you're still saying, I did everything right, is showing that you're thinking of it in two black and white terms. It's not a checklist of I did everything right or wrong, because it's not like I did this so this good thing will happen. That's not how it works. There are bigger things like that, but then there's a whole bunch of other things that aren't just like, oh, you get a positive point or a negative point. It changes little things in the story. It doesn't mean you killed this guy, you're a bad guy, or you went on a date with what's-his-face and you're a good guy. It changes other things that happen throughout the flow of it. It's not a black or white thing.
Yeah, well, Raw Meat, I never played Undertale, but you and I watched R-Type, my brother.
Yes.
Beat the game, and didn't he like literally do like everything wrong?
Did
he get like the worst ending?
He did. No, he didn't get the worst one possible. He definitely didn't. But he got one of the badder ones. Yes, based on what he did, because your brother did what he does in typical fashion and doesn't pay attention to much.
Aww.
But yeah, I'll never forget him. As I said to do, I'll never forget him.
He felt so terrible.
Yeah, he sat there at the ending, and after it ended, he like had a very interesting stare on his face, and he sat in silence for a little bit, and he was just like, wow, so this means this and that means that, and he's like, man, that's crazy, and he's like, I feel really bad.
We all felt bad.
But yes, seeing his reaction was fantastic. So
I can see where you're coming from, though. Like, just hearing that was R-Type's reaction, it's almost like the game is putting you in a situation to do what Do is suggesting. We're like, if I really knew what this was about, I would have made the right decision. But I don't know.
Well,
because the game is so weird.
That's the thing. Yeah, the way you're describing it isn't how it is, though. It's so hard to describe because the ending Dew got was not a bad ending by any means at all. He did not get a bad ending, and neither did R-Type. He didn't get a bad ending either, because there are other things you can do and change that give you a much worse ending, and there's other things you can do and change to get an evil ending. And it's not all about the ending, too. It's about the conversations you have as you play. There's just so much to it. Like when I played through the game, I got one of the neutral endings, which was roughly the same as Dew's. And it made me realize there were things that I could do that I never even considered the first time. It was just not because I didn't think the game would let me, but it was just stuff I never considered. And I was like, man, I never thought of things that way. And I played through it again and I got a different ending, but whole bunch of other things happened while I played. And I was like, man, this is like a completely different experience. And then you go through it again. And I don't remember how many times I played it, but so much changes.
That's another thing, Raw, is you said, you made a good point there. You're like, after you played it again and then again to see what you could change. And I think the game almost is trying to encourage you. I think at the end it's like, play it through again and try to change stuff. So like,
yeah,
it encourages you to play it again knowing what you know. But I was so disheartened with how my playthrough turned out that I couldn't bring myself to go through it again. I really couldn't. And I know the point is to not to get discouraged and go through it again and see what you can experiment with. I just couldn't do it. I was so depressed that whole day. Seriously, I was like beside myself.
Well, see that what you're saying
was inferior. That I was stupid. That I did something wrong, and that everyone loves this game but me. What am I doing wrong? And that's how I thought of it.
That's the thing. You are experiencing the same things people experience as far as feelings from the game go. I'm not saying like they all felt...
You are supposed to feel miserable, dude.
That's what I'm not saying, that you're supposed to feel bad. I'm just saying you experienced intense feelings, which is what the game is made to do. But the feelings for you were so much more intense that you don't want anything to do with the game again. It's very rare that you get a game that actually makes you feel things, and those feelings stick with you after the game. And that's one of my favorite things about the game. But the feelings were so intensely negative for you that it pushed you away from the game, where for me, they were just so intense overall that I couldn't wait to go in and do it again. And that's when I saw how much is different when you play through it and how much the game is watching you when you play the first time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I wanted to be very careful with how I talked about this game because I have a tendency to snap in the moment and like come off like an insensitive person, which is how I came off to you, I'm sure, when I was venting to you, RMC. But like, I've had 2 weeks to think about it. I respect the game. I respect everything it's done, and I watched a ton of videos about it afterwards too, because I knew I was never going to play it again. I was like, I got to know what you could do different, and like all that stuff was really, really impressive, But it wasn't for me. It was not an experience that I enjoyed, even afterwards, especially afterwards, I would say. And I just felt inferior. I felt terrible. Like I needed to shrink immediately at that moment because this game brought me to my knees. And like you said, that's what it wants. It wants to elicit this emotional response. And I think that's great. I love games that are like that can get certain responses out of me emotionally. I just didn't expect it to be depression and inferiority, like usually it's like, hey, you did really great, or like, oh man, like that was a bummer, kind of a real crappy ending, but this was like you, Andrew, sorry, I'm just gonna use my real name. You, Andrew, sitting in this chair playing this game are stupid and inferior, and that's how I felt. And I'm sorry, that's just how I felt.
So
Nick,
Nick,
a good taste.
Wolford Chaser in the chat is saying exactly what I'm thinking. He says, if Undertale gave you any emotional reaction out of it, it succeeded, and it did. It just, for you, it was so intense for me, but it's so intense for you in a completely different. You are having the same feelings everybody had, regardless of the ending that they got. It's just yours are so much stronger, and I think that's great. I know you didn't have a great experience because of it, but to have a game elicit that kind of emotion out of someone is so unbelievably rare. I think that's really interesting.
And that's why, like I said, I wanted to be careful with how I talk about it. I want there to be developers inspired by this and want to make games similar to this. I don't know. I didn't know how to deal with the feelings. I still kind of don't. All I know is that I'm never going to play the game again. And if someone asked me what I personally thought, I would tell them that I personally didn't care for it. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad game. Of course not. And I don't think anyone should not play it just because I didn't like it.
So to wrap things up, I think it shows that, like, when it comes to eliciting an emotional response, something more in the style of Life is Strange is for you. It handles it differently, and I certainly felt that was an emotional game, but it's much more cut and dry. And it also, like, at the end of each chapter is like, you did this, everybody did this, here's the breakdown, and this is what it means. Like, it's much more, game focused than thought focused. But Life is Strange is fantastic. That's another one I'd recommend everybody. That's very clear-cut choices. Every time you make a decision that matters, the game is like, this will be important.
You're making a great point here, because I talk a lot about Life is Strange or Gone Home or Edith Finch or Everyone's Gone to the Rapture or Detroit. These games that I think are like these story-driven emotional experiences where I'm in control. Undertale made all those look like child's play.
Exactly.
I think that's why another reason why I'm so resentful of it, because it made all those games that I really felt like had an emotional impact on me. And it was like, you know what? Those are nothing. Those are just right or wrong, black and white.
Yeah.
You can go through that with your eyes closed, even though it feels emotional at the time. This, you can't make the right decision your first playthrough, even if you wanted to, and that frustrates me.
I think, well, again, like, I would argue that the right and wrong decision thing, like, is a different. I don't know if it's the right way to look at it, but I get what you're saying. But yeah, those games, I love those games too. They are great. But I think what it is those games tell you a great story and make you experience emotion, but from a third-person perspective. Whereas Undertale, it's like you are going through it and you feel the emotion rather than seeing it through a character.
And then at the end, they tell you you're stupid.
Well, that is not true. They did not do that. And I even rewatched your ending to see exactly what was said, and that's not true. But
They just tell you you're a bad person.
It's a hell of a game, man. It's a hell of a game. I appreciate your stance of saying it wasn't for you, but you respect what it did. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I want people to try it out. I want people to play it. But if you were to ask me my opinion, I would say I didn't care for it.
Or the problem is there were no rat hats in it, so you didn't like it.
Well, I'm trying to think. No, there weren't any rat hats, but it wouldn't have been out of place. Like,
that's true.
It's an interesting game.
That's true. Thank you, Du. I know we put you through the ringer on that, but on a personal note, thank you very much for playing that game. I know it took a while, and I know you weren't like keen on it, but you did it, and I honestly mean, without getting super sentimental, I super appreciate you playing that game, because it is, man, it's unlike anything else I've experienced in video games or really in any other entertainment medium, and I really appreciate that you played it. I'm sorry it wasn't your cup of tea, but like I said, you got out of it what I got out of it. It just pushed you in a different direction. I can't ask for anything else. Thanks so much for checking out this highlight to the Go Nintendo podcast. If you'd like to subscribe to the podcast, you can check out the description below and subscribe to this channel for more podcast highlights.